Hey there, students. I plan to do some more detailed videos on Jefferson and Hamilton, but I've gotten some questions from some APUS history students about the major conflicts between Jefferson and Hamilton. So I'm going to go ahead and just do a really short video where I'm going to show you a graphic organizer and take you through the primary points of contention. This would also be good for a quick review if you just need a refresher. So first of all, you have this first party system, which are the Federalists, led by Alexander Hamilton and John Adams, and then the Republicans. Now, of course, they referred themselves, Jefferson and James Madison, as Republicans, but they're referred to today, usually in political science circles, as Democratic Republicans, or by historians as Jeffersonian Republicans. So usually you'll want to differentiate that. Typically, when I refer to this party, I'm referring to the Jeffersonian Republican Party, and I tell students to be mindful that they may also see it referred to as the Democratic Republican Party, although Jefferson and Madison wouldn't have used the term Democratic to describe their views. They would have used, well, Republican. That's what they called themselves. Keep in mind that this is not the same Republican Party that exists today. It's actually the forerunner to the current Democratic Party. And so, first of all, their conflict is about federalism, the nature of the federal government. Should the central government be dominant or the state governments? Keep in mind, federalism is when we have two levels of government, central government and the government of the states. Whereas Hamilton and the Federalists believe in a strong central government, and the Jeffersonians believed in states' rights. Hamilton believed, having a consolidated government, it's more efficient and it can run better, whereas Jefferson and Madison believed that a state government is closer to the people and can also respond to their peculiar interests. People that live in Georgia aren't going to have the same needs as people who live in Maine. So that is the biggest point of contention, is how active is this central government going to be? Now, this is largely grounded in their fears. Whereas Hamilton and the Federalists fear anarchy and mob rule, and they see strong central government as a way to ensure that that doesn't happen, Jefferson and Madison are afraid of tyrannical government. Think about Parliament as a central governing authority and what they had to go through with that. So you see here why it is that the Hamiltonians believe in a stronger central government, the Jeffersonians believe in states' rights, is their concern about mob rule and tyranny. And as far as the Constitution goes, the Federalists believed in a loose construction of the Constitution. Think of it, this is where we get what we call the elastic clause, or the necessary and proper clause, that you see here that this is stretching. Loose construction, we can stretch it out just a little bit sometimes. That the Constitution doesn't always necessarily have to say something in order to mean it. This is the doctrine of implied powers, that there are times when I may not tell you something directly, but there's the implication. And when the Constitution's unclear, the Federalists would err on the side of giving power to the central government, whereas the Jeffersonians believed in strict constructionism. Now, of course, this is going to pose some problems for them later when they take power, but Jefferson believed that the central government only has the power to do the things that are directly listed in the Constitution. And that is the idea of strict construction. The Constitution is a contract that you can't just run around on. Think about your car note or your mortgage or something like that. That's a contract. And somebody can't just change the terms or interpret that to their benefit without the consent of the other party. The Federalist support base was largely urban and centered in commerce, people that were involved in commerce and the very young manufacturing segment, whereas the Jeffersonians tended to be rural and agrarian. This was a party of farmers. Keep in mind, at the time, farmers made up the vast majority, 80–90% of the country at that time. So the Jeffersonians are going to have a long time where they are in power and virtually unchallenged. Now, as far as government involvement in the economy, keep in mind that Hamilton wants a strong central government, whereas the Jeffersonians believe in a less active central government. And that goes right along with this philosophy when Hamilton believes that the government should get involved in the economy to help with economic development, whereas the Jeffersonians believe no, they are laissez-faire, okay? Whereas Hamilton wants his hands on the economy to kind of direct it. He sees himself as Secretary of the Treasury, as kind of coach of the team. The Jeffersonians believe in that Adam Smith invisible hand, that we should let that invisible hand work, and that is going to create the best economy. The biggest point of contention between Hamilton and Jefferson would be the national bank, because here is a power that makes the federal government more powerful, the central government, and also it is not said anywhere in the Constitution that this central government has the power to charter a bank. So Hamilton, believing that the government should be involved in directing the economy, says very yes to the national bank, whereas the Jeffersonians, heck no. That this is something that is not in the Constitution. It's something that makes the central government more powerful, and it helps manufacturers and commercial interests more than it helps farmers. So keep in mind that these philosophies are coherent philosophies that go together. Should there be a protective tariff? Now, the Constitution says that tariffs can be collected, that goods coming into the country, imports, can be taxed. And Hamilton says, well, they should be taxed not only for revenue, not only to raise money for the government, but if we want to discourage imports from other countries and build a manufacturing sector. For Hamilton, it all comes to encouraging domestic manufacturing. So he wants to use the tariff to protect the infant manufacturing industry. Whereas Jefferson says that no, tariffs should only be to raise money for the government, and the government should not try to stop cheaper or better made goods from coming into other countries. Jefferson's thinking about the consumer. Keep in mind that farmers at this time, they grew crops, they sent them out to market, and then they got goods from European countries. So the farmers aren't better off with a protective tariff, only people who are seeking to manufacture. Now, the other thing is, keep in mind, a protective tariff is the government getting involved in the economy, picking winners and losers, saying, we want to direct this sector of the economy instead of just letting the invisible hand play out. Oops, you saw my hand there. Now it's invisible. Okay, there we go. And then there's the federal assumption of state war debts. Okay, every state took on debts to pay for the American Revolution. And Hamilton would like to see the federal government take on the debts of the states, okay? That we take all these debts, we put them in one pot, pay them off together. After all, we were all in this together, and we still are. Now, Jefferson says, no, this binds us more under the federal government. It raises the national debt and all that kind of stuff, and add to that that Virginia had already paid off its war debt. Virginia's war debt was zero, so now Virginia and any other state that had paid off its debt, they can pay for Massachusetts and South Carolina's war debt in addition to their own. The Jeffersonians, being for states' rights and a limited central government, they believe that this should not happen. Now, Hamilton ends up getting that in return for moving the capital to Washington, D.C., which was decided by their dinner table compromise. And then finally, in their foreign policy, the Hamiltonians are Anglophiles. They believe that England should be our trading partner, should be our ally to the extent that we should have one at all. And the Jeffersonians tend to be Francophiles, that they side with the French. The Jeffersonians are going to be more supportive of the French Revolution than the Hamiltonians are. If you want to see more on that, take a look at my video on Washington's foreign policy, where it goes into these conflicts between the Jeffersonians and the Hamiltonians, specifically regarding foreign policy. So, just keep that in mind, that the Jeffersonians were for states' rights, strict construction, no bank, a laissez-faire economy, and generally the government being hands-off and as small as possible. Whereas the Hamiltonians favored a more active government to avoid mob rule, loose construction of the Constitution, whereas the Jeffersonians are strict. And they want the government to be active in promoting economic development. Essentially, Hamilton is trying to build a great nation in the sense that we are an economic power. Jefferson is trying to build a great nation in the sense that we are free and that we're not tyrannized like all the nations of Europe as he saw it. So that's Jefferson and Hamilton. If you want to see more history, go ahead and subscribe if this is helping you. Check out my website, tomrichey.net, Twitter, Instagram, even Facebook. Look for me online. Like, dislike, comment, all of that stuff. And I'll be back soon. Until next time.